Hi students, welcome to OSN classes. I am Dr. Anurag Agarwal and this is OSN Academy of English since 1998. I feel immense pleasure to announce the new batch for Jharkhand Public Service Commission, that is called JPSC. And yes, those students who wish to join my classes for the JPSC optional English literature, they are most welcome because today only the new batch of JPSC launched. And it is a great privilege, a great opportunity for all the students of optional to get into this batch and not to be carried away with those subjects which are not your profile, which is not your forte students. If you love literature, if literature is your dream, OSN Academy is always going to nurture yourself up to the last. And for that, I really feel proud to tell that my student of 2022 batch who just followed my classes blindly, my guidance, my content, my test series, she is now an IPS officer. So like her, like all the young students aspiring for UPSC and other state service examinations, OSN Academy is a single destination in India for all the classes, for all the literature examinations, including the UPSC and civil services. So let us start with the JPSC syllabus. The syllabus is in front of you. It is not a very vast syllabus, but yes, the content should be rich. It should have that expertise and experience. So you can see that there is a line of content going on in front of you. There is a language portion, and then, yes, it is proper literature. History of English, then fiction, drama, poetry, critical study, and prose, critical study, and so many things. This all will be covered in your classes. The special JPSC study material is also designed as per the syllabus which will be given to you. On the screen, you are able to see the special UPSC study material because 95% students all over India, they take the UPSC panel, and with that help, they take the other civil services state examinations. But it is my devotion and hard work and my passion to make you a civil servant that I keep on giving the state examinations also. So now, have a copy and pen so that the topic which I have taken is Wordsworth. And Wordsworth, you all know, that is a poet, his poetry, his questions and answers, and an understanding of Wordsworth for a graduate level, for a postgraduate level, and for a UPSC or a state optional is different. So here in my session, I would like to tell all my students to stay till the last of this lecture and understand that how to cater to Wordsworth. You might have read Wordsworth from the very basics from the BA Part 1. But today I am going to take Wordsworth and the total assessment of his poetry, because this session is going to help you understand Wordsworth, understand his poetry of diction, his theory of poetry, and yes, a lot many things. Fine. Any questions you may ask students? I would advise all my students of NET, LT, PGT, TGT, SET, and so many batches are there. You have just to go to the Play Store and download a new application which has come. And yes, I would advise my technical team to give my students the link of the batch of the new application so that they may download. Fine. Any questions? Whoever are, Yogita Sachan, Yash Singhal, Uma Shrivastava, Gaurav Singh. I'm an aspirant of LT grade. Okay, Gaurav. Many students have joined the LT grade. And yes, it is a great opportunity, Gaurav, that you may be able to take the LT batch by downloading the application OSN Academy from the Play Store. So, my topic today is for all the English literature students, whether they are for UPSC, JPSC or any, because Wordsworth is a common author. My topic is Wordsworth's poetry and assessment. और ये जो word है in assessment, here many things will come. Everything will be coming in this word assessment. So many things, so many questions come in your civil services, but I'm trying to teach you that how you have to answer. Now, my dear students, in making an assessment of Wordsworth's poetry, what has to be taken into account? We will have to take into account his limitations as a poet. His limitations as a poet. देखिए point wise मैं आपको पढ़ा रहा हूं. If you have to assess Wordsworth's poetry, first of all take into account his limitations as a poet and the great qualities. Number 2, great qualities in his poetry. Why? Because there are not one but 2 Wordsworths, and one of them stands along with Shakespeare and Milton as the third of the supremely great English poets. But let us first take up the limitations of Wordsworth's poetry. The study of Wordsworth's poetry reveals certain glaring effects, or you can say glaring defects. बहुत जबरदस्त डिफेक्ट्स आपको मिलेगा अगर आप वर्ड्सवर्थ के पैशनेट रीडर हो. And some of the shortcomings of Wordsworth's poetry have been glossed over, but some of them are too patent to be easily ignored. That he shows imperfection, not even his hardiest admirers deny. अगर हम बहुत पहले चले जाएं, as early as 1800, the poet warned prospective readers that they might frequently have to struggle with feelings, and that feelings किन चीजों की? Strangeness, awkwardness, as they will be reading the second edition of Lyrical Ballads. They will look around for poetry and will be induced to inquire by what species of courtesy these attempts can be permitted to assume that title. And in certain respect, जो readers हैं ना, उन्होंने ये feel किया है, उन्होंने ये देखा है, they have felt, they have looked and inquired, as Wordsworth predicted not only in 1800 but ever since among the earliest of these who were his peers. Peers means बराबरी वाले, साथ वाले, colleagues. For example, Coleridge. Coleridge Wordsworth को idolize करता था. Coleridge idolized him, even leaned upon him at times as a sturdy, moral monolith, yet devoted some thousands of words in what? In Biographia Literaria to the errors of style, tone, syntax, into which he thought Wordsworth had been led by over-absorption in an indefensible theory of poetry. आज जो मैं आपको theory of poetry पढ़ाने जा रहा हूँ या पढ़ा रहा हूँ, that can change your level of Wordsworth's great opportunities which are going to come in front of you whenever you are going to discuss Wordsworth. You will never find a lecture like this if you just सिट एंड लिसन इट केयरफुली कि आपने अभी तक वर्ड्सवर्थ को जो पढ़ा है, क्या कभी आपने ऐसा पढ़ा है? एंड यस, इट सीम्स टू बी अ फैक्ट, ऐसा लगता है, ये सच्चाई है, दैट कोलरिज सेट द साइट्स फॉर व्हाट हैज बीन अ कंटिन्यूइंग क्रिटिकल बैरेज। जो कोलरिज की लिस्ट थी ना, कोलरिज लिस्ट ऑफ inaptitudes in Wordsworth has not been improved upon, nor has been appreciably added to inconstancy of style producing inadvertent bathos, occasional mental bombast, linguistic incongruities, a certain over solemn matter of factness, suggesting an underdeveloped sense of humor. So, such errors of commission are actually scattered up and down. And if I talk about its inequality, वर्ड्सवर्थ का जो आउटपुट था वो बहुत ज्यादा था. It was very voluminous. और इतना ज्यादा था कि it was very difficult for the poet to maintain a standard of equality all through his poetic creation. ये बिल्कुल भी पॉसिबल नहीं था, क्योंकि जब आप चीजों को वॉल्यूम में लिखते हैं तो एक लेवल ऑफ स्टैंडर्ड को मेंटेन रख पाना बहुत मुश्किल है. तो नेचुरली क्या हुआ, सम ऑफ द पोएम्स ऑफ वर्ड्सवर्थ, जैसे जो आपके कोर्स में भी होगा, इंटिमेशंस ऑफ इमॉर्टैलिटी फ्रॉम रिकलेक्शंस ऑफ अर्ली चाइल्डहुड, देन आपको याद होगा ओड टू ड्यूटी, लाउडामिया, दे आर ऑफ अ वेरी वेरी हाई कैरेक्टर. उसी तरफ कुछ पोएम्स ऐसी हैं जैसे द इडियट बॉय, विच इज मच बिलो द स्टैंडर्ड. अगर सच्चाई की बात करें, इन फैक्ट जैसा कि मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड ने सजेस्ट किया है वर्ड्सवर्थ के लिए, in fact, as Matthew Arnold suggested, Wordsworth is a poet of passages. कभी कोई पूछ ले तो आप क्या जवाब देंगे कि yes, Matthew Arnold was the person जिसने कहा था, सजेस्ट किया था कि वर्ड्सवर्थ कौन है? He is a poet of passages. And in order to appreciate his poetry, we shall have to refer to the few chosen poems rather than to the mass of huge production ranging from the depiction of the poor peasant life to the highest expressions of noble ideals. कितनी बड़ी बात मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड ने कही थी. And my dear students, Wordsworth sometimes rises to the highest poetical raptures. वर्ड्सवर्थ कभी कभी तो अपने हाईएस्ट पोइटिक रैप्चर्स तक पहुंच जाता था, और कुछ समय ही यूज्ड टू डिसेंड टू द लेवल ऑफ डलनेस. कभी कभी तो सूरज पे पहुंच जाता था और कभी कभी रेगिस्तान नीचे आ जाता था. सो दैट वाज द लेवल ऑफ वर्ड्सवर्थ. समटाइम्स ही वाज एट द टॉप ऑफ हिज पोएटिक फीलिंग्स एंड समटाइम्स ही यूज्ड टू कम डाउन, डिसेंड टू द लेवल ऑफ डलनेस. And when the inspiration was on the poet, he produced fine poetry. But when he wrote just for writing poetry, मैं ऐसे इसको समझाऊं कि जब उसके अंदर एक इंस्पिरेशन है तो वो बहुत फाइन पोइट्री लिखता है, लेकिन जब वो लिखने के लिए लिख रहा है तो he used to produce dull and uninspired work. And we find a curious combination of the highest poetry with the boldest prose in his writings. जब वो लिखता है किसी डीप इमोशन से, फीलिंग से, तो उसकी जो कविताएं होती हैं वो बहुत ऊंचे हाइट पे पहुंच जाती हैं. When he used to write blended with emotion and feeling, his poetry reached to a great height. But when the emotion flagged and the poet just padded on, his poetry descended to the level of prolixity. His level of poetry descended to the level of dullness and even cumberlessness. So, referring to his point, मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड ने ये ऑब्जर्व किया that to be recognized as a great poet, to be possible and receivable as a classic, Wordsworth needs to be relieved of a great deal of poetic baggage which now encumbers him. ये कोट अनकोट मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड ने लिखा था वर्ड्सवर्थ के बारे में. So, my dear students, this has to be the system to qualify any civil services examination with English literature as the optional. You may find little bit tough while I am explaining, while I am trying to guide you. But dear, हमेशा हर कड़वी चीज अच्छी होती है सेहत के लिए, हमेशा ध्यान रखिएगा. अगर थोड़ी देर के लिए कोई चीज़ आपको कठिन लग रही है या नहीं समझ में आ रही है, दिस मीन्स दैट इज़ एक्चुअली द बेस्ट फॉर यू टू क्वालिफाई द एग्जामिनेशन. बिकॉज अगर हम पूरे हिंदुस्तान के को अगर एक नज़रिए से देखें तो आपका जो कंपटीशन है उसमें आपको बेटर करना है. व्हाई यू हैव टू बी सिलेक्टेड? यू विल बी सिलेक्टेड व्हेन ओनली यू विल बी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम अदर्स. और जब आप दूसरों से अलग होंगे तभी आपको एक ऊंचा प्लेटफॉर्म मिलेगा. और जब आप अलग कब होंगे? जब आप दूसरों से डिफरेंट लिखेंगे. और डिफरेंट कब लिखेंगे? जब आपका लेवल स्टैंडर्ड लेवल से काफ़ी ऊपर होगा. और ऊपर जाने के लिए यस, नाउ यू रीड अ राइट मेंटोर, अ राइट गाइडेंस, अ राइट कंटेंट, अ राइट क्लासेस, and how to achieve good marks in your optional papers. So that is what I always try to tell students कि कैसे लिखना है, क्या कंटेंट होता है. केवल टॉम डिक एंड हैरी की तरह आपको समरी नहीं लिखनी है. अगर हम बात करें वर्ड्सवर्थ की इगोइज्म की, इसमें ये डिफेक्ट में आता है. अभी हम केवल लिमिटेशंस की बात कर रहे हैं. हमने अभी तक के लेक्चर में आपको करीब 15-17 मिनट से मैं पढ़ा रहा हूं. आई हैव जस्ट डिस्कस द डिफेक्ट्स. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू वर नोइंग दीज डिफेक्ट्स टिल नाउ? एक बार थम्स अप करके बताइए, एक बार मुझे बताइए कि हाँ सर, अभी तक के जो बारे में आपने बताया था वो मुझे नहीं पता था या आपको पता था. प्लीज टेल मी. मुझे अच्छा लगेगा अगर आप बताएंगे. और देखिए ये भी डिफेक्ट है, egoism. This is also a point in discussing the defect. And yes, the most noticeable defect in Wordsworth's poetry is his extreme egoism. Extreme egoism. Of all the poets who ever wrote, Wordsworth made himself most avowedly the subject of his own thinking. And the habit of referring always to his own personal experiences brings about a loss of interest in the journal readers. So, the habit of perpetual self-study, though it may conduce to wisdom, does not always conduce to life, or you can say the freedom of movement. Fine. अब आपको याद है कि कीट्स ने वर्ड्सवर्थ की पोइट्री के लिए क्या कहा था? कीट्स कॉल्ड वर्ड्सवर्थ पोइट्री द इगोइस्टिकल सबलाइम. ये क्वेश्चन कई बार आपने देखा होगा, नेट के पेपर्स में भी आता है. हु कॉल्ड वर्ड्सवर्थ पोइट्री द इगोइस्टिकल सबलाइम? द इगोइस्टिकल सबलाइम. कभी देखा है आपने? कभी पढ़ा है ये? How many of you? How many of you know this, that कीट्स ने कहा है वर्ड्सवर्थ के लिए द इगोइस्टिकल सबलाइम. एंड विलियम हैजलिट, आपने नाम सुना होगा. विलियम हैजलिट was very near the mark when he observed, we do not think our author Wordsworth has any very cordial sympathy with Shakespeare. How should he? Shakespeare was the least of an egoist of anybody in the world. कितनी बड़ी बात है. फाइन. ओके योगिता, अब ये हो गया. हमने आपको इगोइस्टिकल सबलाइम का एग्जाम्पल भी दिया, उसका इगोइज्म बताया. अब एक डिफेक्ट और है जो बहुत बड़ा डिफेक्ट है, दैट इज लैक ऑफ ह्यूमर। कुछ क्रिटिक्स का ऐसा मानना है, सम क्रिटिक्स बिलीव दैट वर्ड्सवर्थ हैज नो गिफ्ट फॉर ह्यूमर। भगवान ने उसको ह्यूमर का गिफ्ट तो दिया ही नहीं है। लाइक मिल्टन, वर्ड्सवर्थ हैड नो सेंस ऑफ ह्यूमर, बट लाइक मिल्टन अगेन he could command savage irony जब भी वो डिजायर करता था, whenever he desired. At rare times in his poetry, Wordsworth shows inclination for frolic. It is the frolic of good spirits in the habitually grave, and he cannot caper lightly and gracefully. And on the other hand, we have the opinions of क्या नाम है उसका, Geoffrey Durant and John F. Danby, who find that Wordsworth is an accomplished comic poet. उन्होंने तो यहाँ तक कह दिया कि he is an accomplished comic poet. And these critics find comic touches in Peter Bell, even in The Idiot Boy. अगर आप इसकी पोएम पीटर बेल देखें तो देयर आर मेनी एविडेंसेस ऑफ अ लाइवली एंड इवन impish sense of humor at work in what has been taken as a simple poem. And if we talk about The Idiot Boy, Idiot Boy जो उसकी पोएम है, at times Wordsworth's management of stanza, जो stanzas होते हैं, and rhyme, they are reminding us of the professional humorist. कितनी बड़ी बात है। किसी ने यहां तक कहा है, क्रिटिक्स ने, कि वर्ड्सवर्थ को ब्लेम किया है दैट ही इज बीइंग टू ऑप्टिमिस्टिक एंड इट अपीयर्स टू द रीडर्स दैट वर्ड्सवर्थ इज डिटरमिन्ड टू सीज एंड एग्जिबिट इन एवरीथिंग द एलिमेंट ऑफ गुडनेस, द पिक्चर्स ऑफ लाइफ दैट ही हैज ड्रॉन are, you don't know, you must know, yes, is marked with a note of optimism. Arnold has complained that Wordsworth put by the cloud of human destiny, suggesting thereby that the dark side of the human life could not be seen by him. वो dark side देखता ही नहीं था. He always used to see the brighter side of life. He never used to see the life as Tennyson used to see. And this is certainly true of poems like The Brothers, Michael, Ruth, Sailor's Mother, The Affliction of Margaret. But Matthew Arnold's judgment is not wholly correct. क्योंकि बहुत सारी पोएम्स में वर्ड्सवर्थ के, सिंस इन सेवरल पोएम्स ऑफ वर्ड्सवर्थ वी कम अक्रॉस पॉवर्टी, वी कम अक्रॉस क्राइम, वी कम अक्रॉस इंसैनिटी एंड रूइंड इनोसेंस. इसलिए ये कहना गलत होगा. इट इज देयरफॉर wrong to say that Wordsworth did not see the cloud of human destiny or averted his eyes from it. So this is important. आपने A.C. ब्रैडले का नाम सुना होगा. A.C. ब्रैडले ने यह रिमार्क किया है that Wordsworth sang of pleasure, he sang of joy, he sang of blitheness, he sang of love. Whenever in nature or humanity they assert their indisputable power and turning to pain and wrong and gazing at them steadfastly and setting themselves to the present, the fact that yes, he yet endeavored to show what he had seen, sometimes the pain, the conditions of happiness and good. And yes, that is why Wordsworth is Wordsworth. So my dear students, this was all about the defects of Wordsworth's poetry. In my next lecture, I would also like to tell you about the greatness of Wordsworth's poetry. But yes, how many of you are interested that I should continue my class and you would like to know about the greatness of Wordsworth's poetry? आप लोग बच्चे हमको एक बार थम्स अप करके बताएं कि आप लोग वर्ड्सवर्थ की लिमिटेशंस को हम लोग पढ़ चुके हैं, अब उसकी ग्रेटनेस को आप पढ़ना चाहेंगे या सुनना चाहेंगे? हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू आर इंटरेस्टेड सो दैट आई मे कंटिन्यू टू टीच यू the greatness of Wordsworth's poetry? Tell me please. According to your suggestion, I would extend my lecture. Okay then. Thank you so much, students.